And all right, welcome to episode 11 of Coach P's Corner Podcast. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Garrett York, the Director of Software Engineering at Driveline Baseball, and not his first podcast. So well, he said he wouldn't call himself a veteran, but I'll call him a veteran. So thank you for taking the time to do this, man. And a shout out to Coach Sack at Earlham Baseball for connecting us and getting us set up. And actually the second Driveline employee to appear on this podcast. So I'm excited to kind of get your perspective on things. We had Connor Watson on a couple different times. So excited to have you, man. And I'm going to give you the floor here. Why don't you tell us kind of about your background, where you're from, and a little bit about your personal life and how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. So first, thanks for having me on. Yeah, shout out to Coach Sack as well. But yeah, excited to be on the show. But a little bit about me. I'm from a very small town. Um, Technically, where I tell people I'm from is not really where I'm from, because the where I'm actually from is even smaller. But yeah, anyways, started playing baseball around 4 years old. Um, Played basically only baseball until closer to junior high. So it was my first organized sport. Um, net Fun fact on that, I never actually played on a grass field until I was about 13. So I didn't know it at
Wow.
the time, but I didn't realize that most folks playing Little League actually played on a grass field. So that's
Yeah.
fun. But yeah, went to a really small school. Um, right before high school, a local or not local, but within about 30 minutes, a local team went basically one game away from the Little League World Series. Realized, hey, if I switch spots, I can potentially play with these guys. So that's what I did. So um, moved to a little bit larger area and started playing baseball there. And yeah, I had some pretty decent success in high school. Ended up getting hooked up with Coach Sack. Attended at least one or two Earlham camps, and then I came on to Earlham to play. Um, is there anything particular before that you'd be curious on? I can talk about Earlham or whatever else. I don't know.
Yeah. If you could just kind of dive into your experience and I guess you said you went to a camps. Is that kind of how you got connected
Yeah,
with Earlham baseball?
yeah, exactly. So I play baseball. It's called at the time it was Newcastle Chrysler High School. It's just Newcastle High School now. They I
Hmm.
guess aren't as big of a fan of Chrysler anymore. But yeah, head coach at Newcastle's Coach King. He knew Coach John Cate and then Coach Sakasitz at Earlham, and he recommended that I attend a camp. And I'll actually say one of the more interesting experiences about the camp, I believe, is the winter camp of probably 2010. Um, Went to this camp and I was pretty impressed with the facilities and everything for a smaller school. Earlham is pretty lucky in the facilities that it has. But at that camp, Coach Cate at the time, he drew this at the end of the camp. He drew this imaginary line, and he said, "Anybody who's committed to Earlham cross this line." And probably about half the group at the time crossed the line. I didn't know it, but a lot of those were already folks that are already set to go. And he's like, "This group is going to do something special here, and if any of you want to be a part of this, um, can't encourage you enough to come to Earlham." So at that time, Earlham did not have the strongest winning history,
Hmm.
and it was definitely in the building phase. And I just remember that from the camps that really stuck out to me. And yeah, some of the guys that stepped across the line were a lot of the guys that I played with after I actually went to Earlham. So, but yeah, I got hooked up with Earlham going through camps initially, and then obviously the normal communications that you have with a college coach as you're going through that recruiting process.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, Earlham had not had a winning season in over 40 years prior to, gosh, I want to say 2013 or so.
Yeah,
I could be a little bit off on that, but
it's
it
in the
was a while.
ballpark. I was there. I think it was 2014, and then I think my senior year was the first time they made a conference appearance in the actual
Yeah.
conference tournament.
Yeah,
So
and so quite the turnaround with the construction of Sadler Stadium back is about 10 years ago that was built. So
Yep,
now it's become one of the nicest small college facilities in all of college baseball, regardless of division. And so you were there, like kind of helping to turn this program around. And I would love to hear from you what that experience was like and all the work that went into it.
sure. So I started, it would have been fall of 2011, and uh, there's some memorable experiences in there. The weight room where there currently is a beautiful weight room. It's got tons of equipment, very nice. That was not always the case. I remember at one time we were lifting and the roof caved in because there was a leak in the previous weight room. It was just everything was tough. I know we had some of the cast iron dumbbells. Some of them were hollowed out just from age, and like
Wow.
some of the heads would fall off. It was just it was a bit of a mess. So, but the thing about Earlham and I'll say Coach Sack particularly was the energy and the basically the direction that he kept painting. It made it not matter as much. It was a really
Mhm.
cool time despite uh, all of the I'll say the shortcomings of some of the facilities in the early years. Um, the energy was unmatched, probably to this day of anything that I've been a part of. The if you've been around Coach Sack for any amount of time, you know that he definitely when he comes in the room and
Mhm.
yeah, he has a certain way of motivating people. So it was a really cool experience. Some of the hardest workouts I ever went through were in those first 2 years, particularly. Um, yeah, I don't know. He changed his attitude on certain things. But yeah, those first 2 years were very intense. And then once we got the new facility and so forth, it showed a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. And obviously, we started winning more.
Mhm.
And yeah, it all around it went from kind of like the worst of the Rocky cut scene to like, hey, we have this beautiful facility. We're winning games. The program has a little bit more respect. Overall, it was just total 180 from freshman year to senior year.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a testament to obviously you guys that were there during that time, but it takes a lot to kind of build a program and all the people that have to be involved, it over the course of the last 10 years now, having gone to two NCAA tournaments, um, from not winning for 43 years. I mean, it's amazing.
So
And, you and the guys that you played with there, they really had a big part in that. So that's cool to hear. And after you graduated, if I'm not mistaken, you continued to pursue playing baseball. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah. So basically, uh, each summer, I actually think I started this my freshman year, but it really didn't come to any kind of fruition until my senior year. But um, from the time I got to Earlham, my goal is to play professional baseball. Um, it's a bit of a pipe dream when I started. When I ended, it improved a lot and actually became more of a possibility. So what I would do, I would send out letters actually, um, even
Wow.
even for 2015. That might be a little bit of an old school way to do it, but would I think it's about 75 to 100 letters a pop. Would send it out to every MLB organization, every independent organization I could find. Just, hey, these are my numbers. This is who I am. If you have any tryouts or anything, let me know. So did that. My after my senior year, I had a pretty successful senior year. I did get a hit from the at the time is the Mount Rainier Professional Baseball League. If you've not heard of it before, it's because it doesn't exist anymore. It's very short-lived. But they hit me up, invited me for a tryout. I flew out to Washington, had my tryout, made the team. Um, can go into some funny stories on that one if interested.
Yeah,
But
go ahead. Yeah, let's hear it.
yeah, so I flew out on a Sunday, and it was late. Had me fly into Chicago, then from Chicago to SeaTac, and I flew in. I probably arrived in SeaTac around I don't know 10 p.m. and I'm waiting at the airport for somebody to come pick me up. I didn't really know what to expect. Well, they don't show up for about 3 hours, so it's around 1 a.m. in SeaTac, and I've never been on the West Coast really at this point. And so I'm in a strange place at a strange time,
Hmm.
and I don't know what kind of car this guy was driving, but it's a um, very small, barely enough room. He pulls up, he calls me, he's like, "Hey, I'm coming through the terminal." I open the door to his car, like a couple cans of Red Bull come out. I'm like, I don't even know if this guy slept in a few days. It's like, yeah, I'm like the not the manager of the team, but I'm like help out a lot. And so then we take off, and then we have a 2 hour drive back to Hoquiam, Washington. So if you don't know where that's at, it's on the far west coast of Washington State, and it's right next to Aberdeen, Washington. And for folks who don't know, that's where Kurt Cobain's from, is Aberdeen, Washington. So fun fact there. But
Yeah.
anyways, he takes me to this Acona Lodge in Hoquiam, Washington, and he's trying to haggle with the people at the front desk to give me a room. I don't know what the deal was, but I just knew I was really tired. And so I finally get a room. It's probably, I don't know, 2:30, 3 a.m. Uh, and like, okay, you got to be at the field at, I think it was 9 or 10 a.m. the next day. So not a lot of time for sleep.
Yeah.
So next day, go to the field, uh, run through the motions, sign a contract. Uh, then my first outing is later in the week. So the interesting about the Rainier League, the teams were not close together at all, and you'll see some independent leagues. So the United Shore League up in I think it's Michigan, right? They
Hmm.
at least my understanding they started out with a single field. They had multiple teams work out of a single field, which is actually a pretty interesting approach. This team or this league did not approach it that way. We were playing. I think a team was from Skagit Valley, which if you look at a map of Washington State, it is not close at all. It's a very far drive, which might be recently did not succeed, unfortunately. But anyways, that week we were playing uh, a series against Skagit Valley, and my first outing, we're playing at Olympic Park in Hoquiam, which is actually it's a pretty nice park for an older ballpark. It's I think it was Grace Harbor College used to play there, but
Hmm.
it kind of reminds me of if you've been to McBride Field or McBride
Yeah.
Stadium.
Yeah.
It has a maybe a smaller version feel of that. But my first outing and my only outing, it was probably the second or third inning. Our starter throws a pitch, his elbow pops, and luckily he didn't tear anything. He thought he did, but he luckily he didn't tear anything. But he comes off the field, the manager goes out, and he's just like, "York, come on out." So my first outing, I didn't even warm up in the bullpen. I actually warmed up on the game mound in front
Oh
of
man.
the home crowd, and I ended up throwing a few innings. Went well. It was awesome. And then that weekend, so like I said, I flew in on Sunday. That game was probably a Tuesday or Wednesday. We leave to go to another field. I honestly don't remember where we were going, but it was a few hours away. I remember getting to see Mount Rainier for the first time on the bus. That was pretty neat.
Sweet.
Um, but we get to the field where we're going that Friday night. We're at probably it's like barely a chain link Babe Ruth field. There's barely any lights. There's one umpire. He's wearing Chuck Taylor standing behind the mound calling balls and strikes. And it's like, oh, okay. We were a little spoiled with our home field, so got to see
Wow.
some shortcomings there. We got to the hotel after the game, and it's like we didn't have hotel rooms, so like we all had to buy our own hotel room. And then like the next day, uh, the league puts out like a Facebook post or something, says, "Hey, they need some amount of money to keep the league going." So safe to say, it did not survive. So I flew out. Like I said, I flew out on a Sunday. That very next Sunday, I was flying back home because the league had
Oh
already
man.
folded. So yeah, pretty brutal, but it was an awesome experience. Even though it was maybe didn't sound pleasant all the time, it was pretty cool. It was just like a whirlwind of events in one week. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was summer of 2015. That was the first part of summer of 2015. The rest of the summer, I hit up basically every tryout I could find. I went to Cincinnati Reds open tryouts, went to different independent league open tryouts. Um, it was a little ridiculous some of the stuff I was doing. I went up to Cleveland one time to it was Lake Erie Crushers. I went up
Hmm.
there for a tryout, and the manager actually caught me. He didn't have a catcher. The manager of the team caught my bullpen, And a similar story that I faced a lot was that I just didn't throw hard enough. I was basically a
Mhm.
soft throwing lefty, probably low 80s on a good day, and
Mhm.
that's fine. That's just how it went. But that was kind of wild. He's like, "All right, I'm gonna go suit up," and I'm just like, "What?" Like, didn't see that coming. But I funny story on that one. So I left from Cleveland, came back through my hometown of Newcastle, Indiana, grabbed some more clothes, showered. Then I started heading to, I think it was Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I was headed because there was a Pecos League tryout. Basically the next day or 2 days, it would have been 2 days. So yeah, I left Cleveland in an evening, stopped at home, found a rest stop. I think it was just outside St. Louis. Slept for I don't know 4 or 5 hours, and then the whole next day driving to Santa Fe, and then that next day hit up a Pecos League tryout. It was a terrible tryout. I couldn't throw a strike. My arm was gassed. Like I wasn't rested or anything. It was just
Yeah.
it was like looking back on it, it was just a silly idea. But like that's the kind of stuff I was doing, trying to find somewhere to play. But um, yeah, none of that panned out. And then the fall of 2015, Coach Sack and the Harlem staff that they let me help out around the program, use of facilities because I was still trying to play.
Mhm.
And then 2016, I played in the California Winter League. Did pretty well, but velocity's just been my plague forever.
Mhm.
Got done with the California Winter League in it would have been February of 2016, and that's actually when I headed up to Driveline for the first time. So I'd heard of Driveline before, um, particularly just it may have been their blog or the website, but I figured I'm already on the West Coast. The California Winter League's in Palm Springs, California, which that's beautiful. If you've never been,
Yeah.
recommend going at least once. It's particularly in January, February is a really nice time to be there compared to the Midwest climate where it's cold and
Yeah.
snowy.
Yeah. No kidding.
But yeah, I played in the California Winter League, no dice. Headed up to Seattle. Technically, Driveline's in Kent, but we can say Seattle just to make it easy for folks. But yeah, I spent the next, got there in February, stayed there till the end of April, training at
Okay.
Driveline, saw a lot of progress. That was my first experience with weighted baseballs and that type of methodology. Had
Mhm.
never really done anything with weighted baseballs. I dabbled a little bit, but nothing too serious. Um, and then yeah, came back to the Midwest for a little bit, did hit up some more tryouts, and then went back to Seattle for about 4 months, and then uh, October, November-ish of 2016, and it was like student loans are catching up to me, time to hang it up, and then that's when I decided to get a real job. So,
Well,
but yeah, I was gonna.
I mean, at the end of the day, though, can you feel like you became as good as you were going to be at baseball? Like, did you give it everything you had? I mean, how do you
Yeah.
feel about that, I guess?
Oh, I definitely think I gave it everything I had at the time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think honestly the worst thing for me during this second stint out at Driveline was I was working a manual labor job and
Mm.
I wasn't able to dedicate as much time to training as I would have liked. Yeah, student loans get you in that way. Sometimes you got to pay
Man.
the bills. So, um, yeah, that was probably the biggest bummer of that. But hey, it's all a pretty decent learning opportunity, really. Like having to give up something you've put in so much time uh, for other things. It's like although it wasn't what I wanted, it was a fair learning opportunity and how learning how to deal with uh, at that time basically the biggest setback I had ever had in terms of like a career purpose or anything, right? Like
Hmm.
that's basically what I had trained for the last 5 to 10 years, and then it's just like, hey, like it's basically done. So
Yeah, that it's tough, but has to be done. And I think
yeah,
if there are any, college players or younger players that are listening to how much work you put into not just training for baseball, but like getting yourself into these positions where people could see you.
yeah,
It's not easy. You were grinding, man. That's
yeah,
some good stories. I drove out to New York from Minnesota for a tryout that ended up resulting in nothing. But if you don't take that chance, you never know. So I think there's some good lessons in there about how you kind of have to go make these things happen. They're not just
Oh,
gonna
totally.
be presented to you. So some good
For
stories
sure.
there. And I know you have another good story. You tweeted out a thread about this is after you had stopped
Yep.
playing and you
Yep.
started working. And then, so can you share the story about how you actually started working at Driveline and what led up to it?
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. So, yeah, like I said, I hung it up in 2016. I found a software engineering job. It's my first real job in Indianapolis. Did that for ba basically just about 2 years. Um, and one one day in January, I was just online. I was definitely appreciative of the job that I had, but it wasn't my calling. It was in financial tech for a student loan servicer, which that was probably my least favorite thing at the time. It's a bit ironic
Yeah.
that that's where I went to go work, but yeah, I knew that the ABCA conference was going on, so I took a look at the website and I saw that Driveline was speaking, and I was like, that's cool. So I checked out Driveline's website and I saw they were hiring for a full stack developer. And although the application listed certain criteria, I was like, well, I've got a pretty reasonable background in baseball, and I've been working as a software engineer for a couple years, so it's like, what the heck, I'll try and apply. So I saw that the application uh, deadline was actually the day prior, and so I called them and I was like, hey, I literally just now came across the application. Curious if you guys would take a late submission. And they're, yeah, sure, just send it to, I think it was just send it to support@drivelinebaseball.com and we'll make sure it gets in the right hands. And I'm like, great. So went home, filled out the application, sent it off, and didn't hear a response from. I just wanted to get a confirmation, like, hey, did you receive my email? Um, and I tried calling them again, no answer. Which, to clarify, I don't want to talk poorly on Driveline support. They're all rock stars. Just for this
Yeah.
particular scenario,
Yeah.
I wasn't getting a response, and I was getting a little impatient. But yeah, I talked with my time girlfriend, now wife, and I was like, hey, I really think I need to do something about this. They're in Dallas this year for ABCA. It's 12, 14-hour drive. It's like, I'll just take tomorrow off and let's just go down there. And so, yeah, her and I all night drove, stopped at a Office Depot in, I think it was Rockwall, Texas, just north of Dallas. Printed off my resumes because I forgot. And, yeah, I bought us, actually had to buy us each ABC memberships so that we could both get into the
Oh,
convention.
wow.
And yeah, so she was technically an ABC member for a year, but yeah, waited till Kyle got done with his talk in the Expo Theater and went and found him at the booth. And honestly, first thing he said to me, he's like, "So, or do you want to work at Driveline?" Because him and I had at least a little bit of a relationship, right? Because I had trained there previously,
Hmm.
and I had attended. Driveline had come and talked up in Fort Wayne at I don't know, it wasn't a conference, but it was basically a seminar, and I had
Hmm.
gone to that in the past. So it's like I had stayed in touch a little bit, and I was like, yeah, yeah. So that was kind of funny that it's like he already knew about it because that was my biggest concern, was that he didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I told him, like, yeah, I just wanted to make sure you had my information and so forth. And so he's like, wait, you drove just to give me that? I'm like, yeah. He's like, how far of a drive is it? I'm like, I don't know, 14 hours. And he's like, wow, okay. So him and I caught up for a little bit at the booth, and then he's like, so what do you have going on later tonight? And I'm like, nothing. And he's like, you want to interview? I'm like, sure. So we went, found some random hotel, got some in and out. I slept for a couple hours, best I could, given the circumstances. Woke up, showered, went back to the convention, and found him. We had an interview, probably lasted an hour, and it's a good interview. I mentioned it in the tweet, but we were in this abnormally large room. I mean, it looked like it could have been like Knights of the Round Table type, like huge ceiling, really long conference room table, and it's just him and
Yeah.
I just sitting across it. It's kind of funny, but yeah, we had the interview and shook hands, thanked him, came home, and then 2 weeks later, I think it's like 3 a.m. Got an email, woke me up, saw that it was an offer letter and was like,
Wow.
okay, this is what I'm doing. So yeah, packed up and started Driveline in February of 2019 and been working at Driveline ever since.
That man, when I saw that, I was like, this guy is awesome. Like just going out there and going after what he wants to do. Like that's a really cool story. And so your title is a software director of software engineering, correct?
Correct. Correct.
So um I have no idea what that even is. Like, I mean, okay, I might be selling myself short a little bit, but I want you to explain that, like what your job is, to me.
Sure,
Like I
sure.
have never heard of what a computer is before.
Okay, okay. So I'll get some context too. I did not start off as director of software engineering. My first title at
Okay.
Driveline was just software developer.
Mhm.
And as the company grew, so I was the first full-time software developer, software engineer at Driveline. And like as it's grown, obviously you have to scale titles and so forth. So basically what I do at Driveline is management of systems and software engineers on staff. And so some examples, like establish like best practices for coding contributions and so forth, setting up permissions, and basically like if we have a new feature idea, for example, on a particular system, um, a lot of times I'll be involved in the initial planning and just like, hey, like this will work, this won't work. Maybe we need to consider certain things just because I'm I've got my hands in a little bit of everything on driveline systems.
Okay.
Just over the years, like as we've grown on our business systems, on our R&D systems. Um, Not to say I'm the best on any one particular system, but I just have a very wide knowledge on the various ones. So a lot of what I do has to do with planning and management of a lot of software engineers. I do still write code, uh, not as much as I used to, just given more management responsibilities, but definitely still contribute to our code bases uh, when I do have that time, which it's still a blast. I can talk more on what some of that is, but yeah, that's kind of
So
what my day looks like.
yeah, so I guess relative to like the baseball training aspect of Driveline, um, this might be a silly question, but like how are those two connected? Like what, I mean, are you involved with any of the baseball training stuff, or do you strictly do just the management of the engineers?
So when I first started drama, so it's kind of I'll say yes to both,
Okay.
um, but in different ways. So when I first started at Driveline, basically what trainers were doing, we'd have baseball operations and R&D folks. They would give the trainers Python scripts that the trainers would actually run on their own computer. So that was kind of wild to think about. It's like if any product you ever bought or tried to use and they're like, hey, yeah, just make sure you download Python 3.6 and do da 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 da. It's you just be like, whoa, that's not what I want. So basically, like the first thing that I did at Driveline was I took these raw tools that were great and I organized things in a way so that trainers could just go to what you would normally see on a website. It's like, hey, you put in some
Mhm.
numbers on a form, you click submit, some stuff happens that you're not aware of, and then great, you've got this report or video or whatever that's been manipulated or processed in a way that the tool's good for. So
Mhm.
that was very integrated with the trainers and what their direct goals were at a very, I'll say, micro level. And then now, I still talk with trainers a lot on a few particular things, but with the growth of Driveline and so forth, a lot of it is business systems focused. It's
Sure.
so a lot of the folks that work on my team, they're doing similar stuff to what I did a long time ago. Um, they're
Okay.
dealing more one to one with trainers and so forth. A lot of where I'm spending a lot of my time as of recent is more on the business system side, but in terms of software engineers like interacting directly with trainers, that's still very much alive and will
Okay.
continue to be alive because our goal is to aid the trainers. Our goal is to make their processes as streamlined and easy to do as possible. And
Mhm.
that gives them more time to focus on the human element of training the athletes. And you don't have to worry about uploading 20 videos a software that can do whatever. It's like we can just automate a lot of that stuff for you. So that's where we're particularly helpful for the
Okay.
trainers now is that like we're trying to save them as much time as we can so that they can focus on the part that they're best at.
Yeah, that is there's so much value in that. We at Earlham just got the Aware camera system installed
Sure.
at our stadium, and basically what it is it's 6 camera system, and it 15 seconds after a pitch is thrown, it cuts that clip, and you can see it
Hmm.
from 6 different angles, and we don't have to do anything. We have to have one guy operating an iPad, which Coach Sack has built a coaching staff of about 200 people now. So, um, but no, I mean it's such a huge factor in being able to actually spend more time developing players and helping them get better. So um,
Sure.
really the value in that can't be overstated. So really, really
Yeah.
cool.
Oh yeah. I mean
Um,
it's one of the beauties of software, right? It's like you do upfront work once and then it just pays dividends over and over and over. So it's yeah, it's pretty cool what you can do with a computer nowadays, particularly with GPT-4 and all these AI tools, the AI revolution that's coming
yeah.
about. It's like I don't know what if you or Earlham or um, anybody that you interact with daily is using those, but can't stress enough that those are going to be pivotal. Like uh, it's a pretty common quote to hear people say. It's like AI may not take your job, but someone using AI will, and
Ooh, man.
that's pretty it's pretty true as far as I can tell. Because I mean, like
It,
if you're not using it, it's like you're just gonna lose a lot of time. And so yeah, do you guys use GPT at all right now, or have you dabbled in it much? Or
I downloaded an app one time, but
okay,
that's
okay.
literally the extent. I asked it a couple questions. I don't really use it. No.
Sure, sure.
So-
Okay, okay. No worries. It's still, I mean, I think it came out, I think it was November 28th of 2022 was the initial GPT release. I may be a little off on the date, but yeah, I mean, it's still very early. Like there's been a lot of AI companies you'll see that start up and fail and so forth, but Kyle Bodie, I mean, the founder, like he's internally, like you can see his tweets if you follow him on Twitter,
Mhm.
but I mean, you'll see this just sick rack of like 3090 GPUs that's just going to be crushing data for us and delivering insights and so forth. It's pretty spectacular. I'm not saying you necessarily need to go out and do all that, but
Yeah.
you using some of the basic tools, if you can find more ways to use it, it'll definitely be something. I don't see it going away anytime soon. I'll leave it at that.
Well, that's good to know. I'll
Yeah.
try to get caught up on all that stuff again. I mean, this stuff is all a little bit over my head, so I'm good. I'm learning things right now, but
Yeah.
no, that's good to know. And we are kind of running low on time here. Um, so I do have a few kind of personal questions,
Okay.
just for fun at the end. And um, the first one is, what is your favorite kind of music?
Rock metal for sure.
Metal. Nice.
Yeah.
There's a couple Earlham guys that I've met in the last year and a
Yeah.
half that are kind of fans of the metal stuff.
Oh yeah.
Uh, things you do for fun outside of work.
Traditionally, I've always been a fan of skateboarding. I got into it like 6 years ago. Again, I've not done it as much recently, but skateboarding's always been a love of mine even since when I was a kid. But that and playing guitar, I like both of those quite a
Nice.
bit.
So do you play? Yeah, it's got to be electric guitar, right? If you're
Oh
a
yeah, I've
metal
got
guy.
a
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I've got both. I've got both.
Okay.
I've got probably 4 or 5. I don't claim to be a Jimi Hendrix by any means, but I like to dabble.
Are you left-handed too?
No. I play right.
No. Oh, okay. Fair enough. All right. Um, what is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? I'll probably go with the Rocky series. No, really, no particular one.
Okay.
I've just always had a thing for those series.
Fair enough. And then your favorite baseball team. You're from Indiana, right? So you got
I
some
am from
choices.
Indiana. Yeah, actually, my favorite team. I'll just say this because I don't have a better answer right now. I'll just say the Yankees. It was my favorite team when Jeter was playing specifically. but obviously he's retired now, and so I can't say I've kept up with him a ton, but uh, I did go to the last game at the original Yankee Stadium, which was incredible.
Oh, very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. I think Babe Ruth's daughter threw out the first pitch. Yogi Berra and stuff. All these Hall of Famers and stuff went out and took their positions one last time. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Yankees have a special place in my heart. So
Coach Sack is going to like that answer too. He'll appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. Being from New Jersey.
Yeah. But again, man, as we wind down here, I can't thank you enough for your time and thank you for sharing stories and a little bit about what you do. I know there's a lot more you could talk about on that, but um, maybe we'll get you back someday and
Yeah,
kind of take a deeper dive. But I really do appreciate your time on this.
totally. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and yeah, happy to do it anytime.
All right, man. Well, thanks again, and I'll let you know when this is up.
All right, sounds good.
All
Thanks,
right.
Blake.
Thanks, Garrett.